Auckland Palace is one of the most remarkable buildings in this country. For over 1,000 years, this has been home to some of the most powerful men in British history. And it's evolved over the course of the centuries as well, from a manor house from which the bishops would ride out hunting, to a fortified castle to defend the border with Scotland, through to the grand palatial building that we see today.
The Bishop's Palace here in Bishop Auckland has a really long history of the bishops living here. We know that they have this land from documentary evidence from before the Norman conquest. And our archaeological work here has demonstrated how the site developed and changed over the centuries. It started as a great hall where the bishops would ride out on their hunting expeditions, and then it had later stone buildings built, including what is now the chapel, which was the Great Hall, built in about 1200. Alongside that there was a big stone-built bridge, and then later curtain walls developed. This was a significant fortified medieval castle. Then the work that you're seeing behind me changed the site. We started seeing some of those buildings pulled down and the curtain walls turned into ornamental screens, and the large castle buildings scaled down a little bit into smaller, more domestic-sized dwellings for the bishops. And since then the site has evolved again and turned into the Bishop's Palace you see today.
Just really love the sense of deep history that you have on this site. Going back almost 1,000 years, that sense that different bishops have lived here, these really incredibly powerful individuals, and they have transformed this palace throughout that time to fit their needs and to make it a residence that's suitable for their status as Prince Bishop. And we're sitting really in a great example. We're sitting in the throne room, which was the medieval Great Chamber built in around 1300, but it looks nothing like a medieval Great Hall. You wouldn't know that that was here, because instead you have this wonderful Georgian Gothic facade. And this is really part of a scheme of work that happened over the course of the 18th century by various bishops, which aimed to make this site more palatial. So they'd obviously inherited a medieval castle. At the end of the 1600s, there would have been medieval features very present on the site. And it's really from the middle of the 18th century, when Bishop Trevor decided to remodel the entirety of the palace, that it becomes grand and glorious and a place for entertaining rather than a defensive castle. And Bishop Barrington and his friend and architect James Wyatt in the 1790s really go for the Gothic instead of the neoclassical. So they take this series of rooms that are from all different ages of the palace's history, and they transform them into a set of rooms reminiscent of those at royal residences. Wyatt had actually worked at Windsor Castle, so he was very familiar with this concept. And you have a series of reception rooms that become ever more grand, culminating in a throne room to remind visitors that this is a Prince Bishop. This isn't just your regular bishop, this is someone who is still incredibly powerful. Wyatt even designed the furniture, so he designed the throne. The throne that's in the throne room is the original throne designed by James Wyatt. It was actually made by a cousin of his, Edward Wyatt, so they kept it in the family. And probably Barrington didn't even sit in it, but it's this symbol of that ongoing power of the Prince Bishops.
Today, Auckland Palace is cared for by the Auckland Project, which looks after a range of cultural venues in the historic market town of Bishop Auckland. Following a major project to conserve both the palace and the gardens, a new chapter in its history has begun. Whether that's walking into one of the largest private chapels in Europe, through the grand staterooms and into the bishop's private apartments, even rummaging through papers on their desk, or admiring a beautiful work of art, being touched by a powerful object in the Faith Museum, or even strolling through the gardens, this is a place where history happened and will continue to be made for centuries to come.